Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. It's a real pleasure to stand and enter the debate on Budget 2013, our Economic Action Plan for 2013. Before I go on, I'd just like to congratulate the member who just spoke from Prince Albert for his excellent speech. I'd also like, since we just a few moments ago had a tribute to the outgoing leader of the Liberal Party, to acknowledge Mr. Ray for his tremendous contributions here to the House and his affable ways and his he's a great retail politician. I think we all give him credit for that. Mr. Speaker, speaking to this issue, I want to just back up and put the background. This budget, 2013, of course, builds on the measures in the previous two budgets. And I think we have to reflect back on what happened in 2009 when we got hammered by an economic tsunami, a global economic crisis, une crise mondiale, as some would call it, beginning with the subprime mortgage meltdown and the economic collapse in the United States. And of course, the government was compelled to come up with a strategy to respond quickly, to provide unprecedented economic stimulus, support for displaced workers, and underemployed Canadians, and to stabilize our economic institutions. Well, Mr. Speaker, the plan worked. And this EAP, the Economic Action Plan, is following up on those measures. They were the right measures for the right time in a troubled period. At the peak, since the peak of the recession in July 2009, these measures have created more than 950,000 net new jobs, and 90% of those, Mr. Speaker, are private sector jobs. So Canada was the last, late, shall we say, later than our economic partners going into the recession, and we were the first, as predicted, to come out of the recession. Let me remind members that before the economic tsunami hit us in 2008, that our Conservative government had paid down some $39 billion on our national debt. Now that, Mr. Speaker, was it was a wise and it was a responsible decision. It pre-positioned us to absorb the body slam, if I can mix my metaphors with an economic tsunami. But you know, it pre-positioned us to take that better than many nations did. And the outcome of our Economic Action Plan has put Canada in the enviable position of doing much better than most developed Western economies. The evidence for that, Mr. Speaker, Canada's economy has expanded for 6 consecutive quarters. Canada's unemployment rate is well below that of the United States, the strongest showing in more than 3 decades. The World Economic Forum has ranked Canada's banking and monetary system the most stable in the world for the 5th consecutive year. Canada's debt to GDP ratio is the lowest in the G7 nations by far, at about, if I have the figures correct, about 35.8%. Next closest would be Germany at 58.4%, and the average G7 is at 80.4%. So our net debt to GDP ratio is the lowest of the G7 by far, and the envy of most other nations. And finally, Mr. Speaker, all the major rating agencies, Fitch, Moody's, Standard & Poor's, confirm our solid AAA financial rating. So to Budget 2013, our commitment is to continuing to pursue jobs and employment and economic prosperity, Mr. Speaker. On the job front, the Canada Job Grant, that's up to $15,000 per person. It's $5,000 federally matched with provincial and territorial partners and with the employer. That is to match the and the underemployed with jobs and high-demand jobs in our country. It's striking, Mr. Speaker, that in the past year there were some 250,000 job opportunities that were unfulfilled because of a lack of skilled labor in the right place at the right time to fill those jobs. And that's a real drag on our economy, and it's a real missed opportunity for and underemployed people because they lack the skills training. So this budget has got very targeted initiatives to create opportunities for Canadians to get the skills they need to engage in high-demand jobs. This program is expected to benefit some 130,000 Canadians. Now, I already said that about the job opportunities that were missed last year. So I'll go on, Mr. Speaker, with saying that the budget is focused squarely on creating jobs, on growth and economic prosperity. In broad terms, the EAP 2013 has numerous programs to create jobs. It renews the Building Canada Fund, and it lays the largest infrastructure funding program in Canadian history at about $53 billion over 10 years. It provides measures to promote our competitiveness, science and technology, research, genome research, innovation through the Canadian Foundations for Innovation, some $225 million. That will benefit our university communities, our research communities in that capacity. For forestry, some $92 million for innovation in forestry. That is going to be very important for the coastal forest industry in British Columbia. And this budget keeps us on course to a balanced budget by 2015-2016, with diminishing deficits year by year. There are opportunities for apprentices. The budget creates the opportunity for apprentices to get involved in government-funded projects. We're putting, for example, some $258 million per year into affordable housing, and there will be incentives to encourage the hiring of apprentices so they can advance their skill levels through the journeyman level and participate in meeting the need for those skilled trades that's out there. There are measures to match graduates with job experience, some $70 million for an internship program. And there are training programs for Aboriginal students on reserve for post-secondary education. Now, the National Chief, Sean Atleo, for the AFN, has laid out an ambitious goal for education for First Nation students. That is one of his targets, education, economic opportunities. And we want to support him in helping First Nations young people gain the skills to participate in the economy of tomorrow. It's the key to a better future. I note there's some $240 million set aside to help First Nations youth in BC and across Canada access the skills and training they need to participate in large economic projects like those in the resource sector, in many cases happening right in their own neighborhoods. Mr. Speaker, the commitment to infrastructure, long-term stable infrastructure, is extremely important to our communities. Just in the last couple of months, we've had many announcements in my own communities, and small communities benefit from the program called the Community Infrastructure Improvement Fund. And under that program, Mr. Speaker, there were projects like in Oceanside Place in the Regional District of Nanaimo, replacing all the lighting in that skating rink and arena with high-intensity lights, lowers the electrical use and the emissions, and provides better lighting at the same time. We had other announcements in Parksville through the same program for replacing the community sport field and upgrades for accessibility to the park. The Lions putting in an adult gymnasium, outdoor gymnasium. Our Parksville Lions Club, tremendous community citizens. They run a Lions Venture Park there for kids for years, and now they're expanding outdoor exercise opportunities for adults, and I'm very pleased that that infrastructure program is there to help them with that project. Out in Ucluelet, we had announcements there for the Ucluelet Chamber of Commerce through the Community Infrastructure Fund. And the gas tax fund, Mr. Speaker, is so important to our communities. We've had major water upgrades across Vancouver Island, particularly I note many announcements in the Nanaimo, in Parksville area, and Qualicum Beach with major water storage over the last number of years through the gas tax fund. And and also this budget, of course, also implements the pooled pension plans, and our colleague, the Minister of State, was out in my riding, did a great job introducing that as BC brought in legislation to advance the pooled registered pension plans. But, Mr. Speaker, I note that one of the members opposite talked about the Liberal government starting a $1 billion gas tax fund, and we appreciate giving them credit for that. We raised that to $2 billion, and now we've indexed it to help communities come up with the infrastructure they need. And I'd be remiss, Mr. Speaker, if I did not draw attention to the Pacific Salmon Foundation getting the $6 from that Pacific Salmon stamp. That's all going back into community projects to help bringing them back stream by stream, working with local volunteers. The PSF has tremendous local support. I go to fundraisers every year for them, and this will give them nearly $1 million and more funding for those great projects in my community. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I think my time's up. I'll be glad to take questions.
Questions and comments? The Honourable Member for La Salle-Mar. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I listened to my colleague's speech, and it's as if we were reading the Sears catalog. This is going to cost this much, this is going to cost this much, that's going to cost that much. But I haven't heard anything about infrastructure. I haven't heard a kind of consistent plan for infrastructure. It's as if it seems to me that there are many opportunities here, many missed opportunities. There are no priorities. They do a sprinkling of this here, a sprinkling of this there. What is lacking in this so-called plan are priorities. And there's been no discussion with provincial counterparts to see across Canada how we can better invest our funding in the infrastructure of the future. So I'd like to ask my colleague, behind all those infrastructure projects, is there a plan? Were there priorities and were there objectives established?
Well, Bernie.
Well, thank you very much for the question to my colleague opposite. And, you know, this is not the first infrastructure program that we rolled out for the provinces. In fact, we had in 2007 the largest at the time infrastructure program in Canadian history, $33 billion over 7 years, which is now being replaced by a $53 billion program over 10 years. And we're used to working with our partners, the provinces, the territories, and the municipalities, in determining what are their priorities, because actually from Ottawa, we can't tell people where the best investments are. The gas tax fund in British Columbia, by the way, is managed by the UBCM, the Union of BC Municipalities, and they collectively manage that fund. They get together and talk about how that money will be invested in communities across the area, and the municipalities appeal for those fundings, and they come up with great solutions that are helping in our area. I just want to quote for the members' benefit. Where'd it go? Oh, it's right here in my hand. I think she'd be very pleased to hear this quote from the Canadian. Where are we going here? Oh, it's right in front. Oh, here it is. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Canadian Urban Transit Association today applauded the federal government's Building Canada plan as a major step for planning and development public transit in Canadian communities. We're really pleased to see this kind of commitment for public transit infrastructure. Never before has the federal government invested so much in public transit. This budget provides a solid...
Other members still need to pose questions. Questions and comments. The Honourable Member for Westmount-Ville-Marie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Listening to my honourable colleague, everything is sweetness and light, and everything is exactly what all Canadians want, but there's always a price to pay for these things. And since this government came into power in 2006, we've added, well, by this summer, close to $160 billion to the debt. And the debt is something that, unfortunately, you can't sort of hide. It's not going to go away. It's going to have to be paid back at some point. So I'd like to hear my honourable colleague on what he thinks a government should do with respect to addressing the debt that will be passed on to our children and our grandchildren, and that now exceeds $600 billion.
The Honourable Member for Nanaimo, Alberni.
Well, I thank the member for that question. And, you know, we, as I started my remarks, actually, Mr. Speaker, talked about how we paid down $39 billion on the debt. And many of the colleagues opposite over there, the members of the opposition, say we squandered a surplus. Actually, you can't pay down debt until you balance the budget. And so what this budget does, and what we're doing through the great work of the Minister of Finance and the Minister of State for Finance and consulting with Canadians across the country, is we are moving towards balanced budgets by maintaining the transfers to the people that depend on them, the provinces, for the social programs they require, for health care. They're being increased as promised. And we're maintaining transfers to individuals. And we're moving towards a balanced budget on target for 2015 through these very prudent measures that are included in Budget 2013. Thanks for the question.